Hello and welcome to the Giant Talk podcast, brought to you by both There Be Giants and Momentous. If you've tuned in before, you'll notice we're having a bit of an upgrade. Previously, Giant Talk has been about all things OKRs, but now our focus is expanding to how strategy can be connected to results in all types of organisations. Our back catalogue is still available, so if you want to check that out for more detailed OKR episodes, then you'll find what you need there. In the meantime, Roger and James are delighted that you're here, and if you want to contact us, you can drop us a note at growth@therebegiants.com. Enjoy.
Hey there, folks. It's Roger from There Be Giants. Welcome to another episode of Giant Talk. I'm here with my co-host, James.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
Good to see you again, James. And I'm pleased to say we have a great guest with us today, Emily Pears-Ryding. From Redmore Environmental. But James, you know her better than I do, so maybe you're best doing the full introductions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think even better, let's ask Emily to do a bit of an introduction, just to tell us a bit about yourself, tell us a bit more about Redmore Environmental. Where did it start? Just tease us in with a bit of its beginnings.
Oh my goodness, going to have to blow the dust off the books now. So yeah, my name's Emily and I am a director at Redmore Environmental. So we are an air quality consultancy and we specialise in everything to do with air quality, really. We support clients with their needs for land development, industrial work, environmental permitting and anything air related. Where did we begin? So the company celebrated its 10th birthday last year, which was absolutely fantastic. We started off back in 2015. My colleague Jethro set up his business, Jethro Redmore. And about a year later, I came back from my travels in South Africa, and this was the first job I ever really applied for as a graduate consultant myself. And when I was offered the job and joined the team, I brought us to 3, which felt surreal at the time. And I think, there was almost a bit of self-reflection on, is this a good idea? This is quite risky. This is a new company. Air quality wasn't as big in the world as it is now, but, I'm happy to say it was a great decision. So, yeah, we basically have spent the last 10, 11 years finding the growth that we need to support this company. Jethro started the team with some great clients, but his strategy at that point was we just need to grow. We need to build our client base further, and we need the people around us to deliver that work. And now we're one of the largest air quality consultancies in the Northwest. By September, we'll be standing strong with a team of 31, which is just, it's a bit mind-boggling, really, that we've managed to grow so much. We've got 3 new graduates in the next month. It's just fantastic, really. And for me personally, it's just been amazing to be part of it and have such a central role in that. I've seen people come and go, but mostly come and stay and enjoy it. And, to be one of the directors, having gone through all those levels, has just been great. It's just been a fantastic journey.
Yeah. So 3 people to 30, tenfold in 10 years. That's quite some growth.
Yeah, it was a lot to celebrate last year. Really great.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing with that kind of growth, there must have been some people-related challenges along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those challenges kind of shifted as we did grow. When there was only 4 or 5 of us, that, okay, come on, we all know how each other are working, but we need to get more people in here. We need that support. It's been an interesting road. I think we've always been very successful bringing fresh graduates in, that fresh meat. They're really excited to learn more about the air quality world. They've probably just done a dissertation on it or a course on it in university, and they're just raring to go and get stuck into that career using all that knowledge, which is great for us. They're really easy to mould and really easy to work with, but it takes time to get them to a level, where they can confidently work independently and on challenging projects, which at the time didn't come around that often, but when they did, we needed that support there. And really we needed team members with more experience, both from air quality, but both from management. We were a young team, and we were learning from the people above us who were kind of showing us the way. and that was the struggle, getting the senior people on board. There just weren't many. That, you know, a lot of senior consultants are quite happy in the roles they're at. There was a reason that I never left Redmore. So there wasn't a big pond to fish from. And for us, because we just wanted that really quick growth, we couldn't really invest the time that, upon reflection, perhaps we should have done to get that skill level in. We just went back to the graduates, you know, get them in, we'll train them up, we'll make them into what we want them to be.
So have you seen the graduates rise through the ranks then over the years?
Yeah, that's it. So we've had a mix, and I think that was one of the challenges that we faced. So we saw them rise through the ranks and they developed their technical knowledge, but, you know, we struggled to perhaps invest the time in that management element because we were just so focused on the technical work. And I think to then continue to rise, you have to have the management support that you need. And I think we just didn't really get the balance quite right. So I think that was where perhaps we saw people move on to other roles that could support that. And kind of got to a point where we were really pushing, but we just couldn't see the growth anymore. We got to kind of 25, 26 staff, but we just couldn't really get past it.
That's interesting. So has it influenced a bit around kind of over that journey as you've had those problems? Has it forced you or created an opportunity to change a bit around how you recruit, kind of the things you've been asking for and looking for to try and tease out some of those management skills?
Yes, yeah, I think so. And one thing that we've started to do more recently is really understand an individual's personality a lot more, and who they are and what makes them tick, and then how we can get the best out of them. And we started that process kind of with yourself, James, through the training sessions that we've done with you, but we've really brought that in-house. And it started with the team that we were already working with, and we were looking at the disc profiles. We ran a really great workshop that people got a lot out of. You know, not everyone does it and not everyone understands how they work themselves. So it was great to see how they responded to that and see mainly how the directors, that was the key thing that everyone was interested in. How are these people that are leading us, how do they operate? But we've slowly brought that into the recruitment process. So through interview work, we now have the DISC analysis, and we ask them to rate themselves. Not for any reason to then not hire anyone, but it just helps us see, okay, where might this person best fit in the team? We know that they maybe have some technical skills that might suit them more to the industrial sector. But, you know, which people should we get to train them? Because, you know, if they're not going to react well to someone who's quite authoritative and direct, then actually we're probably not going to get the best out of that person. Yeah. And when they're starting their career, because they're probably going to be a grad, then they need that. So it's been quite a successful process. We've really seen some great changes in how everyone's working together.
Oh, that's fab. So going back to kind of that growth and the time of growth and bringing lots of people in, and you had that gap in kind of management. You didn't have people stepping into a bit of that space that you wanted it to. What did that mean for you? And I guess with the handful of you that were leading the business, the kind of senior leadership team, what kind of challenges came up for you to be leading the business as brilliantly as you could?
Ultimately it was a lot of pressure because you know, I spoke earlier about those challenging projects don't come forward often, but they do come forward, and actually, you know, 8 or 9 years later they come a lot more, and we're seeing a lot more now. So when those projects came on, really they fell to the associate and director levels to look after, but then we were also still doing training and we were still doing management, and there weren't enough hours in the day, there weren't enough hours in the week. It was a lot, really. And we got to the point where we just really longed for this middle level, this middle management team who could operate on a number of levels, really, because we couldn't hear as well what the junior team were trying to tell us, because we were focused so much on kind of the training and getting our own work done. And we felt that because there wasn't this senior level, that the juniors were a bit reluctant, possibly afraid to come and raise those issues to us, because they weren't sure how we were going to respond, and actually we're the big scary bosses. And we never ever tried to have that persona, but I think naturally it just happens with young staff. So what we roughly strategized was kind of a senior management team to try and help with those challenges, and bring that kind of middle sounding board, kind of empower that senior level to take up a lot of the management and leadership skills and develop them a bit more, and just allow us to kind of speak between the juniors and the more senior team more effectively. And at the time, it felt like, yeah, this is a great idea. This is a really fantastic opportunity. But it didn't quite work out in that way, because we didn't have the strategy. Right. The only thing we had was, the 4 or 5 of us at, the higher level team. We've seen what we can do, and we've seen it be effective. So let's just do that again, and it'll all be great. Yeah. And we didn't really think about, we knew who we wanted to be in the team, but we weren't looking at personalities at that point. So we didn't really think closely how they would work together, because we just thought, well, we all worked really great together, so surely this is cut and paste, fine.
Yeah, there's a few things that jump out for me there, Emily. First of all, although you perhaps didn't intend on it, you actually started off with a fairly flat structure. And there's a lot of organisations that really strive and value for that. But the reality of it is it can be really hard to make it work. And, having that mid-layer in takes some of the pressure off senior management, gives someone that the frontline guys can go and talk to, the consultants go and talk to, and it's that buffer in between that also helps with translation as well from the senior team. However, it sounds like that, whilst in theory that was perhaps the right model for you, the mix, the makeup of that team wasn't quite right for you.
Yeah, exactly that, and it was something that we picked up a little bit later into the development of that team. So, people have core strengths and core personality traits that aren't visible. And what we've seen over, the first 2-3 years of those individuals' careers was what they let us see. And we'd identified, really strong leaders that could make decisions, and perhaps that they could lead that team, and maybe the more quieter people who could think about things more logically, and maybe that would work. What we actually saw was the people that were more quiet really did want to lead, but just felt overpowered, and then became really unsatisfied that they weren't being given a chance, and all of that was then going on in somewhere that we couldn't see, because they didn't want to show us. So what we started to see was things to fall apart, and it was almost too late at that point. So understanding how that team was going to work together and their personalities would have been, probably a really useful tool.
What were the signals that it wasn't working?
Say that again, sorry.
Sorry, what were the signals that it wasn't working?
So we'd have regular meetings between the senior management team and the directors and associate team. And what we found was we could maintain those meetings, but over time, less and less would come out of it. And we'd get more repeat questions of, well, what do you mean you want us to do that? And we'd say, okay, well, we talked about this in the last meeting. Let's explore it a little bit further. So you're ready to talk about it next meeting. But then we'd have the same question again. Right. So it was almost people were losing confidence because they felt like they weren't doing what we needed them to do. Then it changed to postponing of meetings. Right. And things just became quieter. The communications weren't there. And then you could really see it in individuals. So when we were having appraisals and catch-ups, there was a bit of a change in their confidence. And, potentially they were self-reflecting, thinking they're not doing a good job, whereas we thought they were. But those were the key things, really. Just the communication just kind of slowly went downhill.
And sorry, James, I'm on a bit of a roll here, if you just allow me. And you said earlier that there was no strategy, and at the senior level, you were kind of in the mode of just thinking if you did the same as what you've done before, it would still all work out. So when you started to see this mid-layer not really measure up, not do what you needed them to do, what was where were you with actually having a strategy at that point? Or were you still in the rinse and repeat kind of approach? Or were you at a point where you had a strategy and you were kind of expecting that team to kind of get it and help to, implement it?
I think at that point we realised, okay, we need to bring this into a strategy now. We need to almost reset and start from again and, bring the team back together again. So that was really the key point, that we really got in touch with James, and we did a lot of workshops with them, and they went on their own kind of team building day to try and build those relationships and that trust with each other. But I think it was a little bit too late at that point. They'd already lost too much confidence, and we were just finding it really hard to build them back up to what we wanted. And we felt that rather than really try and force this new strategy and this reimagining of it that we wanted to, we kind of needed to let go, and we needed to take the pressure off that team who were, starting to suffer, take that pressure off, have a rethink about what we want as this director team, what we want to achieve, and what is the most effective way we're going to get there, really, without over pressurizing and damaging someone's experience of their career and what they want to achieve.
And I imagine, because obviously what you've talked to is kind of some of those almost horizontal challenges of how we're getting our teams and the people on the front line, as Roger said, to communicate with us, to be hearing us properly. Did it also create maybe some of the vertical challenges as well, kind of almost silos between the different teams, and maybe even at the senior level? Did you start to see actually we're almost working on our own too much?
There was definitely an element of that. We try and touch base with everyone at the start of every week, but I think as the company grew and we were trying to hold on to everyone having input in those meetings, it became too much. So we've developed a new strategy that we were really cautious that siloing would be an issue, which I think was why we try and avoided it. We just, for so long, we just stayed away from that. Let's just keep everyone talking at the same time about what they're doing individually. But then that's its own challenge because people stop listening. So what we did was move away from that kind of three core junior, senior, director. And the seniors will talk to the juniors, and, that kind of situation. What we've done now is kind of bring everyone together within smaller teams. So, we're a lot bigger, but what that's meant is we now have a lot more capability to service a lot more of different areas. So rather than just looking at land development, we also now have an ecological team, we have a land development team, we have a permitting team. And those teams have now individually grown. So we've created kind of working groups in each of those teams that have their own responsibilities and own feedback processes to make sure that we're not being siloed. Everyone's talking to each other, and we can have much more focused development and progression within those teams, which is actually been quite nice. Really, you can see people progressing more naturally at their own pace, fully supported by the key team leaders who kind of specialise in those areas, which has been really great.
And how have you managed to maintain the consistency across those working groups? That sounds like a brilliant way to address and break down some of those barriers of communication and allow the easy access and just open access to people. How have you made sure inadvertently you haven't then created some really good vertical working groups? How do you keep that consistency across the top? that lose it?
Yeah, so it's the working groups are formed of a mix of director and associate level. So we're still talking about, you know, the people who've got the core knowledge in those areas, and not every director or associate is in every group. So we're in groups that we're interested in, our own interests lie, which means people are invested. The leaders of those groups are invested in what's happening because they have a full understanding of how that sector is working, of who the client base is, where the potential opportunities for growth are, you know, what's the new technology coming out that we can focus on. And that keeps it exciting. And all of the individual groups, because they've all got those people, they're all excited. And then we have our leader working group meetings where the leaders of each team come together, and because there's so much drive, and you know, it's just that just brings it all together and keeps everything ticking over nicely. It's been a really successful approach, and something that, you know, we're just going to continue driving forward.
That's really interesting, because I think if I understand what you're describing there, it seems like you've built good horizontal alignment. You know, vertical alignment's really quite straightforward in terms of a concept anyway, you know, where you've got a strategy plan, set of goals, and you want everyone in the business to kind of work in support of those. So there needs to be some alignment that way up. Fine, get that. But then the horizontal alignment, that's a bit more challenging, because that's about making sure that people are collaborating, people are not duplicating, people understand the dependencies and that they have on each other and on team upon team and so on. So with these groups, as you describe them, has that definitely helped sort of strengthen that sort of horizontal alignment for you?
Yeah, I think so. And it's helped with the other teams as well, because we do a lot of knowledge share. So, you know, the way that we avoided the siloing was that people within the teams are all talking to each other. They all know what projects they're working on, and they're all excited about their own work. But then we do a lot of CPD, and we've got case studies and presentations that we give to the whole team, and that's directors too, which has been really good to pique people's interest and go, oh, I didn't know we could do that. Maybe I could get involved in that way. And then it kind of gets shared around. So then everyone, even around the teams, are all invested in how we're progressing. And actually, I'd be really interested to help out with some of that research on ammonia assessments and things like that. So it strengthens it even more, because everyone's aware of everything that's going on.
Okay. So people are still in a functional team, but they're also in a working group. Is that the way that it works?
And for the most part, so it doesn't happen often that people will split off into do some work in a different team, but we like to let our junior team know that there are opportunities. That, you know, thinking back to some of the challenges in the earlier days where, you know, everyone did everything because we all could, and no one really got into much detail about the core project. And it felt really great for the juniors, but then they very quickly wanted to specialise. So we'd specialise them, and then they don't want to do that anymore, and they've remembered all the other opportunities that they've got, and actually were getting really unsatisfied that they were just being forced down this one route of you can only do this now. So what we've learned from that is, okay, you know, we can see you enjoy this. We don't want you doing work that you don't enjoy, but if you do want to dip into something else, we will support you through that, and we will provide the training. So I think it's just providing more opportunity, keeping people focused on what they enjoy, but still allowing some movement and getting involved in other elements.
And
were there other things you thought about doing before kind of embarking on the working groups? Were there ideas floating around the senior leadership team? We're thinking, why don't we try this or try that, or that you kind of either parked or even attempted and maybe quickly realised that it wasn't making the progress that you've now seen?
I think we definitely tried to get that senior middle level team. We really sat down for quite a while and thought, how could we make this work better? Who who do we want to be involved in what level, and how can we make it work? How can we get that output? But I think we just couldn't get there, and I think we needed to step away from that 1, 2, 3 and just kind of focus everyone on their specialist areas that they could develop in.
Has it made a difference? Oh, sorry, Emily, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think other than that, we just got to this working group, and it just meant you could, as a director, I could focus in on the areas that I wanted to see, and I could provide my experience of that topic, rather than having this senior team and just expecting them to know everything.
Yeah. And that's the question I was going to ask, was what's it allowed you to do as an SLT? What's it opened up? You read my mind.
Time, just time to, at some points, just sit back and watch, which I know sounds really weird, but just see how things are going, how are people working together, how are projects developing, how is our skill level developing, what do we need to focus on for the next 6 months. Do we need to have a think about restructuring those teams, bringing smaller teams within them? Is there an entirely new sector that actually we can work on that? Let's bring it in and develop a new team for that. It's just giving time back to see it all from a much higher level.
And is there space there for your managers that you've brought up who are working as you want to? Is there the space there for them to bring some of that thinking around, actually, this is where I think we could reorganise, or this is where we could, markets and areas we could dive into? Yeah,
exactly that. That is what we want out of our leaders working group meetings.
Yeah, amazing.
There's an agenda that comes out of it, and we'll start off with the key focus areas. How are the finances doing? How is the team working? Have we got any bottlenecks that we need to be concerned about? And then it's about, right, bring it to the table. Have we got any ideas? Any key points that you want to see come out of this? Really,
I think the thing which I really am loving about what you've created here, Emily, is that you've kind of collapsed the hierarchy a little bit. And I guess, as much as anything, perhaps, I'm guessing that was maybe from the observations, the lessons that you had from before, when people didn't want to come and talk to the senior team, even though you weren't big and scary. They kind of thought you might be. So the working group kind of allows everyone to be literally at the same status, so to speak, the same level. And I think that's really interesting. That's really interesting, that especially seeing that, you're not a massive organisation. You haven't got a huge amount of people that you can kind of to play with is not the right description, but I mean, options, I suppose, in terms of how you can organise yourselves is probably the right way to put it. But it seems like, how long have you been doing this, taking this approach for now?
I think we started the working groups about 2 years ago.
Okay, all right.
About 2 years.
Long enough to know whether it's working or not, then.
Yeah, exactly that. And long enough to know that was the right decision, that this is successful now, we need to keep going with it. And long enough that we don't need to put all our energy into it as directors. So when we first started them, oh my word, my email inbox was just full of invitations to all the different working groups that we were starting up, and it was quite a lot. Talking about pressure, that really felt pressured. But we had to make the strategy for each one of them, and we had to make them work. Yeah. And we started off with kind of monthly meetings for each group, and we're now at the point where most groups will only meet quarterly. And the groups that we really want to focus on, maybe we do keep those a bit more regularly, but. Yeah, long enough. We've been doing it long enough that we're kind of in this comfortable rhythm. And we know that if something changes, we just bring it back in, and we meet more regularly, and we get those really focused conversations coming out of it.
Yeah, you've got a nice model here, I think, which a lot of other businesses could probably learn from, to be honest.
Yeah, we're really pleased with it. And you spoke before about kind of removing that hierarchy. And I think it just sort of materialised, this hierarchy element kind of materialised without us realising, because when you're working as a team of 3, 4, 5, you're all really tight, you're best mates, you can tell each other everything, and you know you're not afraid to ask silly questions and talk about problems that you see as a massive thing, but your director doesn't. And I think without us noticing, as that team grew, the juniors developed their own kind of network and felt they couldn't break into this really tight-knit senior team, so just didn't. And I think what we needed to do was reset that without having that senior level. And part of that was also letting go from our perspective. We need to open up as directors. We need to be more approachable and come to you and see if everything's okay. And I think that has built into the working groups as well.
So if I may, and what kind of sort of personal transition have you gone through in this? Has it been quite a challenge for you in the way that you your leadership and management style over the past few years?
One of the key things that came out of my disc profile is I hate change.
You hate change?
I really, really need to be led through change, and you need to convince me of why this is going to work. Right. And if we're going to talk about change, I'm going to be the person in the corner that puts you through hell. I will ask 100 questions and really challenge you. And if you asked any of my colleagues, that would be the one thing that they'd say. Emily really pushes against change. So for me, there was a lot of self-reflection that had to come into that. And there was a lot that I had to let go of. For me, this was my baby. It's my career. I've never done anything. I started as a graduate consultant and I'm here now as a director. And to let go and remember that we've built this team that can do exactly what we need them to do and get the same outcomes, if not better, than what I was doing at that time. So for me, it was a really personal kind of, you need to let go of this, you need to trust the team around you and just know that they'll get through it. And, if they come across challenges, they can talk to me and I'll help them learn from it, and then they'll become even stronger.
And that's a story we hear many times, isn't it, Jane?
Yeah. It is absolutely that, and a lot of the work Roger does and that I do or we do together is very much taking businesses through change, and it's got to start with the leaders. They've got to be ready for the change, and advocate it, and be the champions of it. And it's really difficult, as you say, Emily, when your natural style is I like steadiness, I like stability, I like knowing what is predictable and safe, and what I've spent 10 years of my career growing up through. In that, did it also help tease out some of the real strength of your peer group in the SLT and potentially some of their fears as well that might come to play?
Yeah, I think so. It almost, I don't know. I think through some of the challenging conversations that we had with that team when we were working with them, a lot of the feedback that they gave was that they weren't sure where they needed to be. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges for them, that they couldn't see where we wanted them to be, and I think we were just hoping that they find their way through it.
All right. Yeah.
And it is that balance, isn't it? You don't want to show people necessarily and say, here you are, here's the answer, here's your success, here's your career progression.
Yeah.
You want them to, you want to see that, I guess, that hunger and that ambition, and knowing that they can come to you and that actually they've, they can easily find where those opportunities are, but it's it's that marriage in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that whole copy and paste, we had the hunger and the drive, because if we didn't, we weren't going to exist. And I think we were looking at them going, why don't you have this hunger and drive? And it was there was just there was the bit in the middle that was missing, that communication of this is where we want you to be, and this is why you need the drive, and this is what you'll get if you have that drive. That was just wasn't tying up.
So from all this, and it sounds like you've been on one heck of a journey, both personally and as a as a team and as an organisation. What are the key lessons that you wish perhaps you'd known earlier, but now you know them, you're ready for the road ahead?
Strategy is the biggest thing. Having that solid strategy, not just a kind of, wouldn't it be a great idea if we had this team? Yeah, sounds good. So let's just speak to them on Monday and see if they want to do it. No, we need to really look into this and understand what's the end goal of that team, or what's the continuing operation of that team, who's going to be involved in it, and how do we see their roles working? Because we don't want to have complete control over who does what, but I think having an understanding of how it might work at least then opens you up to that conversation with those individuals to say, look, I think we've got a really good opportunity for you here. We see you doing this. Are you up for it? Are you excited? Do we need to rethink it? And then bringing that all together. And I think having both those elements, that strategy and understanding of how people work, was the key bit that we were missing out of the senior management team. And we look back now on and go, we might have missed a really big opportunity there. And, we've come out with a different approach, which is working really well for us, but it's almost that what could have been if we'd actually approached this from a calm, reasoned angle, and not just we need to put something together and make it work.
Right.
So those are the two big ones. But I think the other element from my perspective is having that trust in the team around you and letting go just a little bit. It's amazing what people can achieve when you let them achieve it. And I think that it's been really great to see. And I wish I'd done that a little bit earlier, I think.
Sounds like you've described Patrick Lencioni's model of functional or dysfunctional teams perfectly there, with trust at the bottom, and then everything you said about through this conversation around people taking that commitment and stepping up and wanting to own it, and the point you've got to with a good open sharing of how we're doing, what are we learning, where do we go from here. And I suppose as we kind of bring this to a bit of a close and reflecting on the growth you've talked about from 3 people to almost 31 people, but you mentioned you hit a ceiling of around 25, 26, but you've gone past that. You've realised, as you just shared, what some of the lessons were. Sharing is what you can. I said, totally respect there might be things that you're working on quietly in the background, but kind of what's next for Redmore, and what's giving you and your colleagues, and if maybe the business, the absolute confidence that you're going to win it, you're going to do it. Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing new. We just want to continue to grow. We're all really proud of the reputation that we have in the Northwest, and why not have it as the UK? We really want to push that growth, but in a sustainable way and in a healthy way that means we're getting the most out of our junior team, who feel constantly supported and they've got that leadership above them, but also allows us as leaders to focus on the key areas that are going to allow that growth, and look at where we can move into across the UK and what other sectors can we get involved with, whilst keeping the technical excellence that we've got. And how do I know that's going to work? Because of the team around me. We have been really lucky over the last 2 years, I would say, and we have managed to bring in some fantastic senior team members that have got a wealth of experience in sectors that we haven't really looked at before. We've never done much in business development, but one of our team members that came in has a lot of experience in that, and they're really bringing the junior team into that world, which I think is great for them. It's a whole nother level of career that you've just never done before at university, all of that networking and attending events and things like that. So having that additional support and those working groups that we've got around us, we're going to do it. We'll just keep growing. I'm a lot more confident growing up from 31 now than I was around that 25, 26 about trying to push to 30. That was making me nervous.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So it's a great story that you shared there, Emily. And I genuinely think you've got a model which is has a lot of value in it and could be picked up by others. So, if people wanted to actually reach out to you, how could they do that?
Yeah, so my contact details are available on our website, and I can share them with you guys. I've got quite a long email address, just because Jethro set me up 10 years ago with my full name. So it is Emily Pears-Ryding at red-env.co.uk.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that goes in the show notes.
Yes,
along
absolutely.
with the website address. Can people find you on LinkedIn as well?
I am on LinkedIn. Yes, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can pick up anything from my experience of growing through the last 10 years. Or anything air quality related.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. I'm sure, James, you'll join me in saying that this has been a really great conversation. It's been really, really revealing, I think, in terms of how you've approached the challenges. So, thank you very much to those of you out there listening. I hope you found this to be another really insightful conversation about how some organisations go about connecting strategy to results. I think we've heard a really good example of how an organisation, in some respects, has actually reshaped itself and to do exactly that, and has obviously done it very successfully. So, Emily, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
You're very welcome. And James and I shall see you all very soon. Thanks very much now.
Indeed.